Today we're going to speak more about theories and more about how do you address certain questions that come up. And that's really what we're going to talk about here. By the end of this program, I hope, inshallah, that you'll have a good answer for questions like why are there different rules for men and women, right? And the questions of why is it the discussion of nature versus nurture doesn't make sense for people to talk about from the LGBT community, etc. And the most important question which we'll be addressing is that is it okay to just say, let me do whatever I want as long as I'm not harming anyone? Right, because that's the big issue that you'll see that's going to be talked about when we talk about liberalism. Liberalism, for you guys who probably studied, if you have studied any, there's a lot to talk about for liberalism. This is what I'm trying to tell you, that if we're talking about, honestly speaking, as a philosophy, as an ethical, moral philosophy, there are many ways we can tackle this issue. There are many perspectives. There are many different types of liberalism. There are different things that liberalism leads to. There's progressivism, libertarian status, conservative, and there's, people think the opposite of liberalism is conservatism, yet there's something called a liberalistic conservative. Okay, that exists too. So there's a lot of things you can talk about from every philosophical angle, which again, it's something you can get from other scholars and other speakers, mashallah. That's not really what my focus here, okay? My focus is, again, inshallah, to take the main arguments from this and to really break it down to you from these three angles. Number one is feminism, second one is LGBT, the third one, which is liberalism and the harm principle. That's what we're going to focus on. So the main guy, when you talk about liberalism, the top dog is going to be John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill, basically, in one of his writings he said, the only freedom which deserves the name is that pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. He says, as long as we're trying to pursue our own good, as long as we don't harm others, right? This is what you call the harm principle. The individual ought to be free to do as he wishes unless he harms others, right? This is the more philosophical way of saying it. Another place he said, liberty consists in doing what desires. That's what it means to be truly free, when you can do whatever you desire. And in the most common modern way I can tell you, the way that we can understand it is obey your thirst. Okay, this is literally, you're going to find it, you are your own God, YOLO, you only live once, live it up, obey your thirst. This entire society runs on liberalism. The idea that do what you want as long as you don't harm anyone else. Okay, and it's something that's very big to tackle and really big to hit, because you don't know which angle you speak about it on. Okay, so you don't need a God, you don't need a society, you don't even need a spouse, you don't need no man, sister. That's what they tell you. You don't need no husband, nobody. You can be your individual, you can do what you want to make you happy. You don't need anybody. Why do you need parents? Parents only get in the way of your own love, your own happiness, right? They only tell you what to do. They bully you. They boss you around. You live yourself. So these types of ideas, unfortunately, because of the society that we live in, they're ingrained into kids that grow up here. So they can't help that when they get older, they say that, why is my father, for example, one kid came to me the other day in our community. He said, I'm tired and sick and tired of the way my parents are dealing with me, the way they're talking to me. He said, I need both of them to go through therapy. Right? So he's trying to force his father and mother to go through therapy, because he himself cannot just be a good son to understand that, beta, when there was one time where you could not change your diaper, someone was doing it for you. Right? This is what we need to understand, humility. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu saw a man making tawaf around the Kaaba holding his mother. Right? And he came up to Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu saying, Ibn Umar, did I pay back my mom for everything that she's done with me for my life? Because he did the Hajj for her, carrying her on his back, doing everything for her. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, you have not even paid her back for one contraction that she had during pregnancy, during the time when she went through labor with you, let alone paying her back. May Allah allow us to understand that. But the idea is that you don't need no God, no society, no spouse to make you happy. This idea pushes people towards individualism. As long as you are happy with your desires, you're not hurting anyone else, then you're free to. There's like one video on, someone's video's on my screen. I can see one brother is looking at me. I can just, I'll just take care of that right now. Sorry. I just felt very violated. I apologize if I feel very frank when I'm talking today. We've had already 2 programs. I'm a little tired. So please, I do apologize for my lack of being professional, for lack of a better word. You decide for yourself. As long as you can pursue your desires, you can be happy. Which, when you're leading in your following of your desires, whichever way it leads you, right? So what can desires lead you towards? They can lead you to, for example, a woman saying that whatever a man has is what I want. Why is it's so unfair that this person can have these many things and I can have them? Why does he have a leadership role? Why can't I have those leadership roles? Why do I get less money when I work? Why does he get more money, right? I want the jobs that he has, all the white collar jobs I want, and all these different things. So this leads to feminism, right? That can lead people to wanting what men have. It can lead people to desiring the same gender, like in homosexuality. Why is that I'm limited to only being with the opposite gender? Why, if I want to have a man in my life as a man, why can't I, right? This type of question comes up. Why can't I be gay? right? Then it even desires what? That I don't want to be my own gender anymore because I don't feel comfortable. So let me just switch genders. So you can see how liberalism is at the root of all these different issues that we have. So these are big problems, and each one needs to be addressed again with its own individual program. There's so much you can speak about each one. But let's start with feminism. Okay, let's start with feminism. This is the Mac Daddy. This is the biggest one. This is going to take me forever. Okay, this is hard. Okay, it's legitimately hard because let's start with defining it. Okay, so I think Abdullah Andalusi, he said it very nicely. He said this morning a feminist said, "You don't know feminism, go study it. You don't know feminism, go study it." So he said, "Sure, I'll be happy to reread it, but first, which feminism is the true feminism you'd like me to study? Socialist, Marxist feminism, material or autonomous versions?" Then he goes and says, anarcho-feminism, libertarian feminism, liberal feminism, first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, radical feminism, separatist feminism, political lesbianism, female supremacy, cultural feminism. He's like, which one do you want me to talk about? Should we adopt trans feminism or the so-called real feminists that we are meant to believe, you know? So when I'm trying to speak about this issue, you see feminists feminism doesn't have a holy book to judge one position from another. All positions, no matter how wacky and anti-Islamic they are all feminist positions. They all equally valid parts of feminism. So the point I'm trying to say is it's very hard. And so before anyone exclaims that feminism just means equality between men and women, sure, that's its aqidah. There's like one aqidah there, but there are many different branches and schools of thought that spring up afterwards. So this word of feminism bears a lot of baggage. Okay, this is why we don't like when people say things like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a feminist. Because you hear things like that. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ was an advocate for women's rights. I know you're saying your intention is good. Whoever's trying to say this has a good intention. We're trying to say the Prophet ﷺ was an advocate to make sure that women get their due huquq, their due rights. But is the rights of women, according to the Western world, the same as the rights of women when it comes to a Muslim world? They're two different perspectives, okay? And that's what you have to be very careful about. When you say he is an advocate for feminism, they literally think that they can take off their hijabs and they can do whatever they want. That's not the feminism that the Prophet ﷺ was advocating. The Prophet ﷺ was advocating the feminism where a woman has free right to worship Allah Ta'ala and please him. Because that means completely something different from what the Western world would consider it to be. I want to make that clear. That's why he mentions in one of his articles. Muslim feminists then try a different tactic and direct away from ideology onto people. They say that all feminists aren't the same, so sweeping statements about labels are invalid. But all feminists are all the same in one thing, the insistence on calling themselves feminists. For some reason, it's so, you have to say you're a feminist. Can't you just be a good Muslim? Right? What, as a Muslim, are you all advocates of human rights? You guys like human rights, right? No one here is against, please. Okay, everyone's, mashallah, everyone here is advocate of women's rights, right? Yeah, mashallah. Do you have to call yourself feminist now? So why do we insist on the term? And that's the problem here. Okay, so I want to make that clear before we really get into the topic. We avoid labels in every instance, right? This is the most important thing. We advocate what it means to be Muslim. It means that everyone is a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and has a right to worship him. Okay, we're going to talk about liberal feminism. I think in terms of a definition, because we got to rock on some definition so we all can agree, there's an imbalance in the rights of men and women, that women are unjustly treated, right? And we are in support of women's rights. Does everyone agree with this definition? There is an imbalance in the rights of men and women, and that women are treated unjustly. And we are in support of women's rights. I think that's a good definition of feminism in general, right? We're trying our best to help sisters out because there is some imbalance there. So they go and say that the solution is in feminism. And Islam does not grant equal rights to men and women, so it must be changed. That's what they will say. They'll say that because they consider that it's unfair that a man can lead prayer, but a woman cannot lead prayer. They'll say that it's unfair that a man can have 4 wives, but a woman can have 4 husbands. They'll say that it's unfair that a man could be the leader of an empire, but a woman is not allowed to be. All these different questions come up, right? So when you think about a feminist and everything that she stands for, Islam is like the exact opposite of what she wants. She's like, you're telling me that I don't need to go and obtain money. It's a man's job, it's a responsibility to obtain money. I also want to do that too, right? And also a lot of other issues come up. Are you telling me that I don't pray like a man? A man prays different from a woman? Literally, Islam is like the opposite of what every feminist in the Western world wants. That's why they have a lot of problems. They'll attack you and say, why does a woman wear hijab and a man doesn't wear hijab? And you kind of get stuck, like, because I'm not exactly sure what to respond to you with. So their main question is this one. Why are there separate rulings for men and women? Okay. Now I want to teach you a little bit of a toolkit of how to handle these questions. When someone who's coming with you with morality or moral questions, right? Questions about ethics, right? Things that they're doing. And they're coming from the Western world. one of the easiest things you can do to help level the playing field, to show them that you guys are doing it too. Okay, you guys are doing it too. For example, the question of marriages when it comes to marrying under than 18, right? Like, for example, ask about the Prophet ﷺ, right? They'll say about why did the Prophet marry such a girl at such age, whatever, right? In any case, you just said, okay, can we just pull up like a list of the different ages where you're allowed to get married in America? And you'll see even ages that go down to 14, right? You guys seem to not have an agreement about this, you know? And so then you can start have a discussion there. Let's say pre-modern world, what age were the people getting married of, generally speaking? They weren't getting married at the ages of 18 like you were thinking about. They're getting married much earlier. I can ask anyone here, when were your grandparents married? You know, my nanu was married at 12, right? This is very what? This is common, right? If you're accusing the Prophet of doing something wrong, you should accuse the entire pre-modern world of doing something wrong. It's not just us, it's literally the entire world. Okay, Islam actually revolutionized it when it said that you're not allowed to consummate a marriage until the age when a woman is actually considered adult, meaning she hit the age of puberty. This is something Islam did as a revolutionary thing. Before this, you find kings and getting married to girls who are literally 2 years old and 3 years old and 4 years old. We have record about these things. So I'm just mentioning this as a point to stress that if you want to level the playing field, you just show them, hey guys, there's a problem you guys have too, okay? So why are there separate rules for men and women? They're upset. They're very upset because they say that both genders should be equal in all physical observances of the law. A man and a woman should look the same externally. Okay, marriage, religious responsibilities, outward observance, etc. So now the question that we need to ask, again, using our toolkit. So you're saying that Islam says that men and women are not equal in their physical observance. They pray different. Men don't wear hijab, etc., right? So does Western society agree that men and women are all equal? Can you think of any area in the Western, what we're living in our countries, that men and women don't have the same areas? Like they have to be playing in two different places? Yes, here. Yeah, go ahead. Bathrooms is good. That's a very good point. And mashallah, we can talk about the bathroom, but something Islam, like America, Western countries pride themselves in, sports. Western society agrees, right, or they disagree on this point, right? Western society, they agree that men and women are not equal on all terms. Because why? Because they say about sports. Okay, so let's look at like Serena Williams, for example. In 2013, right, Williams had a discussion during the David Letterman show, and she relates in the second part. I think people will be interested to see men play against a woman to see how styles match up. Murray was asking her. So when she was asked about on television, Williams had to admit she didn't think she'd have a chance. If I were to play against Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Andy Murray is like number 60 or number 80 in terms of the men's tennis. I don't follow tennis. I don't follow any sports. Okay, but I guess the idea that like a woman, she's admitting Serena Williams is what, number 1, right? She's been winning gold medals for so many years. But she says if I were to compete against a man, I would not even come up here anything close to the first 10. I would come up like 80th or 90th. She's admitting to herself that she wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, this is a reality when men's sports and women's sports are different. Because why? Why are they different? What are you telling yourself? What's the difference between them? Why can't you put a man and a woman together? In like in a race, or even in a boxing ring? Physical differences, right? Physically speaking, they are different, right? And so this is a reality. I want to show you. There was one male rapper in the UK. One time he identified as female. He went to his normal routine into the gym in the morning, and he went for his regular deadlift routine. He identified for a female that day, and he lifted it, and he broke the female deadlift record. Okay, he wanted to make a point. His thing was entirely to make a point. He said, if a recreational lifter such as myself can set those kinds of records in the women's division, I think it should show people what the difference is, why that might be an idea people want to reconsider. If you're thinking we should blend the line between male and female sports, or allowing a person to, when they transition from male to female, and now they're allowed to compete in regular sports, maybe that's not the right decision to make. Because there's something different within the testosterone level within a man that's not in a woman. This is exactly why you wouldn't put them in a boxing ring, which unfortunately within our communities it did happen, right? We find Fallon Fox, the MMA fighter, He was criticized after breaking her opponent's skull. He's a man who transitioned to a female. He went into the ring, the MMA, the octagon, with a woman, and he broke her skull because he punched her so hard. Okay, we used to make this as a joke, right, Mullah? We used to tell people as a joke, you would not put a man and a woman in a boxing ring, right? But this legitimately happened in our community. That this is like so not common sense anymore. But unfortunately, this is what we're dealing with in our communities. So everyone can understand there are clear biological differences between men and women. Okay, sports is not the only area. Mashallah, one of our kids here said, there's also the bathroom issue, which is also important. But there's a different place as well within the military. The military also has differences when it comes to men and women. What are we talking about? First and foremost, when it came to the fitness test, right? They're trying their best to account for biological differences. So they're trying to make a new fitness test. Because why? What's the problem? Because women are, what does it say here? About the disproportionately high failure rates among women. Women are not passing. Why are they not passing the army test? Well, who is the test designed for? Men. So what do you expect? She's not going to be able to do as many because why? Her body's not designed like that. So instead of understanding that maybe women should not be on the battlefield, they said, you know what? Let's just change the test so that more women could be on the battlefield. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we really supposed to accommodate for that? And now this is disproportionate in terms of the army, in terms of how the army looks. We're going to talk about the deaths in war. And now this is where disproportion, you're going to see high levels of disproportion. Okay, in the deaths in war, 99% male are the ones that you'll find killed in the Korean War. 2 females died, 36,572 were male. Okay, in Vietnam, 8 females died, 58,217 males died, 99.9%. Where is any lobbying, any arguments for women to be more on the battlefield? Why is it that men are dying more on the battlefield? I want gender equality here. There should be a 50-50 here, brother or sister or whatever in between. This is making me very frustrated. Why is it that men, it's not even just 2 wars. Operation Iraqi Freedom, 110 female, 4,302 male, 98% male. In 2013, does that mean? Does this help? Did it work now? Okay, I just muted it on my screen. Okay. In 2013, 4,854 people were killed on the job, and 93% were male. Why is that the case? Is because women don't work the jobs that men work. Okay, a feminist will argue for the white-collar jobs. They want the business positions, the CEO positions. Will they want to be the person who goes and fixes up the telephone wire when it breaks? Will they want to be in the mines, coal miners, right? These are predominantly male fields, right? The people who dig graves are men. Have you ever gone to a graveyard? There's only men working there. But where are the lobbies for these places? Obviously, sisters don't want, these women don't want to lobby for these things because they're not in the benefit of women. But if you really want a gender equality, what would you want? That every single job we will have fairness in. But they don't work these jobs. That's why 93% were male who died these difficult jobs. Okay? And so I'm just mentioning these points because there are disparities within Western culture. We're not even talking about Islam yet. We're not even there yet. We're going to get there. For sake of argument, let's just say the wage gap is a reality. Okay? 30% of women make 30% less than men. For sake of argument, there's a lot of discussion we can have about that number. Just for sake of argument, accept it. Okay, we will say that we value a man works, they give him 30% more, and we get 30% less because we don't value how women work. If that's the case, for sake of argument, we definitely value female life more than male life. From what we just spoke about, if there's definitely a disparity here, that we definitely value female life more than male life. To the point that you'll find that when an airplane was landed in the Hudson River, I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was safely landed. That pilot was a hero, right? And it was like in the middle of the river, right? It's a very big river. So then they said, the announcement was made on the airplane, right? What did the guy say? He said, women and children first. Women and children first. They're in the middle of a freaking river. You're not, like, you think a man could swim that far? Like, why is it that women and children first? It's because of the fact that we value female life more than male life. This is why you're going to find on average, men live 6 years less than women. Okay? And I mention these things because I want you all to think about these questions, about really what are men's rights, because it's a big question, unfortunately, that America has no intention to solve this problem. And because we're only focusing on one gender, we're obviously going to cause a disproportion eventually, and there's going to be issues with every single marriage, hence why you see so many divorce rates, because of the fact that we're not talking about the other side. Okay, so that's physically speaking. Everyone's clear on the physical part? We're good? They don't even think the same. Psychologically speaking, when we're looking at this one article, converging lines of empirical evidence from developmental neuroscience, medical genetics, evolutionary biology, cross-cultural psychology, new studies of transsexuality, along with our evolutionary heritage, all point to the same conclusion: there are psychological differences between men and women. And they affect marriage as trivial as sensitivity to smelly socks and significant as susceptibility to disorders such as depression and autism. Literally, it's as simple as smelly socks issues and as big as autism or depression issues. This is a wonderful book written by Dr. Anne Moore in Brain Sex. She said, when a Canadian psychologist entitled an academic paper, "Are men's and women's brains really different?" she acknowledged that the answer to the question was self-evident. Yes, of course. It would be amazing if men's and women's brains were not different, given the gross morphological structure and often striking behavioral difference between men and women. She said that everything is located within the brain, that the brains of men and women operate differently, okay? And I can give you the things that you think about and the things that women think about are two different things, okay? This is definitely, mashallah, sisters, there are so many things I can mention about how well they listen. So let's just go through this for now. In the case of boys, she goes and writes, the hormone principally evolved as testosterone. It's the same substance which was responsible for organizing the developing brains into a male pattern in the womb. Testosterone, an anabolic steroid, helps build up the body, beefing up the capacity to store calcium, phosphorus, and other elements, right? It helps give the male teenager a body ratio of 40% protein to 15% fat, right? In puberty, when boys, puberty comes with a rush. Oh, for you guys, Allah help you with your puberty, man. Allah make it easy, man. The testosterone level soared to 20 times the level in girls, 20 times. As you would expect of a bodybuilding steroid, the sudden spurt in height. Men also develop many more blood cells than is the case with girls. Because why? Because you need more blood cells to do more of the external work that you need to do. The principal female hormone is estrogen and progesterone. They break down the proteins and dietary fats and distribute the fat around the body. That's why the fat distribution on the body is different for a man and a woman, right? So like, subhanAllah, as a man gets older, like he just gets the beer belly, even if he never drank, mashallah. You Muslims, mashallah, will never even have a single sip. But subhanAllah, for some reason, it's like, why is everyone becomes Maulana Sahib when they get older? Like, subhanAllah, mashallah, Allah reward our ulama, accept our ulama, mashallah. But the point is, like, then your sisters, right, they have fat growing in different areas, right? It's just the natural way that their bodies were designed, okay? The idea that I can give you a simple example is, if you were to take your car to get gas, okay? Like you can, when I was younger, I used to tell myself, why is it always we get regular gas, right? Like there's like gas different for different cars, right? Like I think trucks and stuff and vans and stuff, like, things, they get different cars, right? They get diesel, right? They get like diesel. And I was always wondering, like, why is it that you can't put it into a regular car? What happens if you put diesel in the car? You ruined it. You ruined it. Because the car wasn't designed to take that oil, right? That didn't work. So the same way, what happens is, because from the mother's womb, a person is designed to be a male or a female, there's a certain hormone which the body is designed to absorb. So if you are male, you're designed to absorb testosterone. And if you're female, you're designed to absorb estrogen, right? So now when you start to change it and say, no, a man should have more estrogen now, the body wasn't designed to absorb that much. So it causes depression, anxiety, and even suicide, because these men are not supposed to be women. And these women are not supposed to be men, because the body wasn't designed like that. The same way if you put diesel into a car, you're going to ruin the car. Same thing happens to men's bodies and women's bodies when you do that as well. Some of the athletes take the male hormone, produces muscle to increase their performance. And so in any case, naturally speaking, men produce testosterone, women produce estrogen. If that's the case with again, physically speaking, we said they're different. Psychologically, they're different. Even marital relationships are different, right? At the End of Gender, which is written by Dr. Deborah Sow, she writes, marital relationships come at a greater cost to women, right? When you think about a marriage, who has a greater investment in the marriage? Is it the man or the woman? The woman. Why? Possibility of becoming pregnant, taking responsibilities, giving birth, breastfeeding, raising a child, ensuring his or her survival. And she goes, for comparison, for men, this requires an investment of several minutes, about 5 or 6 on average. Hey, I'm offended. I don't know about you, okay, whatever. Okay, I'm not here to argue this point. My point is that a marriage is even considered differently. So a woman has to consider different things when she gets married, and a man considers different things when he's married. You and I, mashallah, a marriage, forget about culturally, like any culture, the man is excited. He's like, yo, I'm happy, man, I'm getting married, mashallah, super excited, mashallah. The woman, in our normal cultures as well. Yeah, we don't need this one, I think. Like, the woman, she's crying, right? She's crying, she's upset, and you're just like wondering, like, when my wife got into the car, I'm like, did I do something wrong from marrying her? I just felt so weird. I was like, but then you have to start thinking, she's leaving her father's house. It's a different perspective, right? Now she's a prisoner in your home, right? And that's what the Prophet said. Yeah, they are like prisoners in your household. You have to care for them and treat them well. And this type of stuff, like, it's a different perspective, right? And these are all, again, I haven't said anything about Islam. This is all facts, right? I haven't quoted anything about any alim, Maulana, whatever. I'm telling you facts that what? Physiologically, physically, psychologically, maritally, right? Any way you're looking at it, men and women are not the same. The advertising industry knows it. Okay, they have not forgotten this. No matter what people say, there are certain things. When they advertise to women, they'll put like a woman with a bag on. They'll show her amongst many other women. Because why? Because a woman would generally, naturally speaking, she'd like to show off, and so they'll show her how she's showing off for another woman. She's walking outside with her bag. You think they're doing it on purpose? By mistake? They're clearly doing it on purpose because they know how the female brain works. Similarly, for a man like Ahmad Didat, he said that he was reading an advertisement in a magazine, and it had a car. And what do you think they put on the car? What would they put on a car to make sure to sell a car? A woman. They put a woman on top of the car and said, what did the ad say? Test drive her now. What did they put next to a Coke bottle? What did they put next to a burger? A Whopper? Burger King. You're just trying to buy a Whopper. They're showing a woman eating the burger. Like, as if it's gonna, I'm just saying, like, it's so ajib. The advertising industry knows it. You and I know that men and women think differently. This is sometimes so difficult for us because when you become married, you think that this woman will communicate the same way you do. She does not communicate the same way you do. A sister thinks that this man thinks the same way I do. He does not think the same way you do. If I were to ask, a simple question comes from sisters, what do women get in Jannah, right? You always get this question, right? What do women get in Jannah? Okay, I'll say, sister, like, I know it's hard for you to grasp right now, but if I were to give like a piece of paper to every sister and said, what would you like to have in life? What would you like to have in life? Okay. This was actually done by one sheikh. He gave it to his boys and gave it to his girls. What would you like to have in life? Okay. So then he gives this list. He says it to the sisters, gives it to the boys. So then it comes back from the sisters. What does it say about what do they want in life? It's kind of complicated. I can't really explain it to you. This is not easy for me to say. One woman said, I would like to have my son back. One woman said that I would like to be away from my in-laws. One person said, like different things, like a lot of creative answers. A lot of creative answers. If I would ask you guys here, my cavemen, about what would you like in life? Allah will literally give you an ayah about everything you want. Okay, like it's literally so simple. If we were to write it, we reduce it to what? Cars, lots of money. Look at you all smiling. You're like, oh yeah, Mullah, we really love this one. Women, that's all you want. And Allah in one ayah in Surah An-Nisa puts down all the things you want in one ayah. Whereas a woman is a little bit more complicated. So in Arabic you say, as-sukutu ablaghu min al-kalam. Sometimes being silent about something has more effect than speaking about it. It's very easy for men to describe what you want. Allah Ta'ala said, so that way when you go to Jannah, you'll be so happy with Allah Ta'ala gives you. I guarantee anyone who goes to Jannah, they will be happy, no matter what it is. Okay, may Allah Ta'ala grant us that. So the advertising industry knows it. Okay, and this is one of the most amazing things that is from the beauty of Allah Ta'ala's creative power. That Allah Ta'ala create a man and a woman to be different. Okay, what do I mean? Is that there's an ayah in the Quran, فَجَعَلَ مِنْهُ الزَّوْجَيْنِ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, Surah Al-Qiyamah. And from it, he made two mates. He made the male and the female. And I used to wonder, it's an ayah of the Quran. If it's an ayah of the Quran, that means it's a sign of Allah Ta'ala's power. Every ayah in the Quran is a sign of Allah Ta'ala's power. So Allah Ta'ala said, this is an ayah of his that he made male and female, two different species. I was wondering, what does that mean? And I realized after thinking about it so hard that subhanAllah, that the same drop that comes, right? The same, the same fetus, the same, right? It's the same cells, but it produces a man or a woman. And men and women are so different. They're like they're two different species. It's so amazing. Allah does power that from the same substance, as if He created two different species. What do they say? Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And that's the thing. Like you see it, that Allah does so powerful as Allah. He can create two species from one single species, subhanAllah. And somehow, subhanAllah, These two, they cooperate, they're compatible with one another, they relate with one another. And Allah Ta'ala made that somehow. That's the power of Allah Ta'ala. So now let's get back to the big question. What do women's rights look like? Okay, and when we talk about this question, we need to see what are the limits. Can someone deprive someone else of their rights in favor of their own? Just because a woman gave birth to a child, does she have now the right to deprive a father from seeing his children? You know what I'm saying? Does he now become uncle daddy? Unfortunately, which happens in many communities, where now a father cannot see his children anymore because of the fact that a woman has taken complete custody of the child, right? Is she allowed, complete alimony, depriving this man for years and years, as long as he lives, he has to continue to give a check to her? Is that fair? Is that responsible? Is that right? There are big questions here. On the flip side, what are men's rights? No one even asked this question. What do men deserve? What is their rights? They go through all these difficult jobs again. SubhanAllah, one of the most amazing pictures I saw. And again, it's just because I'm not saying this like sisters think that whenever we talk about men, we're trying to oppress women. That's not what I'm trying to do. We just have to value both, right? One person, they put a picture of a family of a mother and two children enjoying inside a house. And what they showed outside the picture was that a man is the father is holding up the entire house. Like a father can't even enjoy sometimes. He comes home, he's so tired, he wants to play with his kids, but he has no energy left. And he really wants to spend time with his children, but he can't because he has no energy. And then what happens as soon as he comes home, sometimes a laundry list of things, a lot of complaints come in about what's needed. And he's like, can I just sit down for a moment? My boss was yelling at me all day. I don't need another boss right now. Like you just literally, sisters, if you just give your man just 10, 15 minutes just to relax at home, you'll find your entire house become Jannah. I'm telling you, just let him put up his feet, let him watch whatever Fox News, whatever he wants to watch, whatever, and just let him relax. Okay, just let him relax, and you'll see a lot of happiness come, because he needs time to de-stress from the things that happen in his day. There are a lot of books I can recommend for sisters if they really want to know how to become good wives, and the same thing for brothers. We have good books about how to become good husbands, because no one teaches us these things. Who taught you how to be anyone? No one taught us how to be a father. Right? I saw my dad hit my kids, so this is probably a good way to teach my kids too. It makes sense, right? It worked for him. I came out pretty good, right? That's what, unfortunately, no one teaches us. So we need education. The Prophet taught everyone this. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What are their rights? Bigger question, what are their responsibilities? No one ever talks about responsibilities. What are the limits of human rights? Okay, what does human rights look like? Is it allowed that we can talk freedom of speech completely? Even if we were to offend someone, can I start calling people offensive names like racist things? Is that okay? Is that under freedom of speech? If I offend someone, if I make fun of their country, if they love a person so much, if I make fun of their mother, for example, if a person punches in my face after I made fun of their mother, don't you think he deserved that? Yeah, right? That's not freedom of speech. That's freedom to get decked in the face, right? Like if you made fun of my Prophet, I love him more than my mother. You don't think that something's going to happen because you did something like that? Is that freedom of speech? Are you allowed to denigrate and disgrace people under freedom of speech? These are human rights, right? There are limits to everything, Can human beings, now the big question, can human beings define their own rights and responsibilities, right? Can it be that a man decides what a woman should have? Or can it be that a woman should decide what a man should have? Do you think that's fair? No. A man and woman seems like they can't seem to decide for one another. So therefore, would you agree? The only being capable of assigning laws to both genders is not one of either gender, but the one who created both genders. Yes. That the only being that could possibly decide what a gender should use, what a gender should have, what are the rights and responsibilities, is only the one that created both of them, i.e. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? This is something that human beings cannot do. And this is something I wrote, one of the papers I wrote on the topic. If they differ in their anatomy, the physiology, and even their psychology, then having the same laws for both genders without exception may prove harmful. Therefore, the divine lawmaker would allocate different laws which is suited for their differences. The gender laws then are byproducts of dealing with how humans were made and how they function in accordance to the reality on the ground. There's something that no one can do. No human being can decide what a human should have, a man or woman should have. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do it, because He's the one who created the product and He created the manual. That's who Allah ta'ala is. And that's why Islam deals with this through justice, okay? They're not the same because their physiques are different, okay? There are different things that you look at for a woman, the different things that you look at in a man, okay? When a woman looks at a man, okay, and a man looks at a woman, the different body parts you look at, right? There are certain parts of the body of a man that don't seem as attractive as they are if they were on a woman. You know what I'm saying? People are like, I do understand you, Mullah, but could you please elaborate? I don't want to elaborate. There's children here. God damn it. SubhanAllah. Like, understand what I'm trying to say here is that obviously you look at certain parts and you're like, okay, that's what I want, right? And a woman be like, yeah, if he doesn't have that, it's fine, as long as he has a good personality. Like, it's a different thing. It's completely different. They've been a lot of different responsibilities according to the strength in the framework. Okay. So now I just want to just quickly finish this last part, inshallah, then we'll move on to LGBT, inshallah. Okay. So in terms of equality, obviously Islam says men and women are equal. Then the actions that they fulfill, they'll get reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, correct? If they fulfill their actions and their rights and they fulfill their responsibilities, Allah will give them Jannah. Allah will reward them. Allah will provide for them. Okay. So it is that these people are equal in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in terms of how the path to get to Jannah is different paths, because it fits to the gender that they were given, right? That which Allah decided for them. So a man will have responsibilities and a woman will have responsibilities. And because certain qualities have been made prominent in a specific gender, steps have been taken in Sharia to curb excessiveness. There are certain things which are nice in a woman and certain things which are nice in a man. And so let's give an example because it protects the soul. I'll give you an example. Beauty is great, right? Beauty is wonderful. The dominant quality within a woman is what? Her beauty. Okay, beauty is great, but it can lead to danger. How can it lead to danger? Like, let's give the example of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam is given an example in the Quran for what happens when beauty is put into very dangerous areas. So, for example, a woman will unknowingly go outside and completely unveil herself and walk wherever she wants to walk. What is she putting herself into jeopardy or risk about? That there are legitimately bad men out there. There are legitimately bad people out there. There are bad men. There are jealous women. And there's envy and a lot of different things out there. So, and this is one thing that's great. Another thing is power is great, but it is dangerous, right? Power is great, and that's the manifest quality, the big quality within men. But it leads to dangerous things like in Fir'aun, right? So power also needs to be curbed. So this is why a woman can dress beautifully as she wants within her home and amongst other women. In a house, right? A woman's allowed to dress as freely as she wants, right? She can dress as beautifully as she wants. She can dress as gorgeous as she wants because she's in the confines of her home. It's a safe environment. She's okay. Beauty is prominent in her. Allah Ta'ala says there's a place where you can show your beauty. But when she goes outside, what does she have to do? She has to cover herself because she doesn't want to attract the wrong attention and place herself in danger. Okay, and avoid the arrogance that comes with beauty. Because if a person becomes arrogant, will they go to Jannah? No. So this all fits into Islam's understanding. If you want to get to Jannah, you got to make sure these qualities are also being regulated. Why men can drive what they want and dress freely? Because you got to show your power. So mashallah, you can drive the Maulana Sienna van if you want, mashallah, because that's the nice Maulana van, or mashallah, it's nice. Or you can drive the Mustang, Allahu Akbar, the Tesla, right? Like you the Tesla, right? Everyone Tesla, right? So you can drive whatever you want because Allah Ta'ala says you have freedom to show your power the way you want to. When it comes to the way you want to dress, you can dress freely, and the way you can drive, you can dress freely, but not completely freely, of course, because certain things which are bad, for example, jewelry, for example, gold, for example, silver, for example, silk. Men are not allowed to wear these things because this is an excess of power which Allah wants you to avoid because you can become arrogant. There's a lot of arrogance that comes with these things. The same way why men should not wear tight clothes, right? They should not show off their physique like that. It's prohibited for both men and women to wear tight clothes. So men should avoid that because this will engender arrogance. And laws have been placed in order to preserve these genders as well. So in any case, there are a couple more things we can mention. But my main thing is that the reason why Islam decided that men and women's laws will be different is because they are different. From the beginning, they were different, so therefore they deserve different things. Okay, and there are a couple more things we could mention, but I'll leave it at this. Inshallah, if sisters have questions afterwards, they can definitely ask. Okay, and you guys, inshallah, can also ask if you have any ideas. I want to talk about LGBT now, inshallah. It's a little shorter. Again, the bulk of the program was about feminism, and the main objection about feminism, they say it's unfair that men and women have different laws. And we argue in Islam that men and women are designed differently from the first place, so they need different laws because their bodies are not the same, their minds are not the same, psychologically they're not the same. They're two different beings, really. And so they need different laws, but both of them can please Allah Ta'ala and both can go to Jannah. That's the equality that we talk about within Islam. If a man fulfills his job, being a responsible individual, taking care of his family, he'll get Jannah. If a woman takes care of her household, takes care of what Allah told her to take care of, she'll go to Jannah. They can both get Jannah. You'll find certain women, because they fulfill the job better than their husbands, they'll go to Jannah in a higher place and actually drag their husbands up there. This is how it's going to be for many people. So in any case, just keep that in mind. That's the exact answer that we give there. In terms of LGBT, how does this one influence liberalism? So I want to, before we get into this, I want to give you a bunch of resources, inshallah. I'll send it to Maulana afterwards, inshallah, about the different resources, because there are a lot of things we can talk about here. I don't have enough time to talk about these things. Like I told you, each one deserves its own program, really. But there are resources because there are legitimate problems within our Muslim community. Certain people have certain homosexual ideas that come up, and they don't know how to handle them, how to deal with them. And subhanAllah, there are WordPresses, there are podcasts. There are even support groups for Muslim brothers or sisters that are having trouble with these issues and they need someone to talk to. I don't know what you're going through. I wish I could understand, but it's not. I just don't feel like that, you know. But a man might feel something towards a man, and he needs some help to talk about it. And Islam has certain resources, mashallah, especially in our time. So many different things we can give as resources here. Historically speaking, first and foremost, okay, let's just talk about historically. And this is a big summary. Homosexuality was considered a psychological disease by the founders of psychoanalysis. When we're talking about in terms of the domain of psychology, homosexuality was considered a psychological disease. Okay, so what are we talking about? Sigmund Freud. Freud is a weird guy. Don't ever study Freud. This man is going to drive you crazy. Even listening to him in class and stuff, you're like, my God, who the heck would ever follow this man? But in any case, they love him so much. He's like the founder of psychoanalysis. It is nowhere that Freud also suggested that homosexuality is a variation of the sexual function produced by a certain arrest of sexual development. What that means in simple English is that Freud considered that if a person did not completely mature, they didn't become completely adult, they might get stuck on homosexual tendencies. They didn't evolve past it, they didn't grow up enough for them to be mature enough to become someone who is a straight person. He considered to be something which is inferior to normal understanding. This is literally within the 1900s, by the way. We're not talking about like 1800s. We're talking about last century people. Okay, Carl Jung said even worse things. He said the disagreeable thing is that the mother has then all the real feeling of the boy, the heterosexual feeling, what is left only an inferior feeling for women. Okay, so it talks about, they have this, I told you, weird stuff. This Oedipus complex, this feeling of a man being attracted to his mother, weird stuff. They were like, what the heck are we talking about, Maulana? I did not sign up for this program, okay? Yeah, you definitely didn't sign up for this program. Trust me, we only started, okay? We only started. Carl Jung said that a man who doesn't get over the feelings for his mother, right? Then he might get only having some feeling for inferior women. To him, women are either mothers or prostitutes, but not real women. Even this adaptation to the woman may be too difficult. Then he says, if he cannot adjust to a woman at all, then there's nothing left for him to become a homosexual. He has to become gay because he can't seem to get over it. And then literally he wrote, the more homosexual a man is, the more prone he is to disloyalty and the seduction of boys. So that's literally what they think about these people. What I'm trying to say is, this is people from psychology within modern times, what they considered first. Jeffrey Santinover, he said it drives from many different reasons: genetic, hormonal, family relations, interaction with peers, psychological trauma. In 1952, the homosexuality was considered part of the DSM, which is the psychological Bible of diseases, right? Psychological diseases. They considered homosexuality to be a psychopathic disorder in 1952. What happens is, within that time, 1952 to about 1970 or so, there's something called the sexual revolution, and where they revolt against sexual practices and stuff. So they want that marriages be separated. They don't want they separate reproduction, and they want to have free relations with whoever and whatever. Okay, so then because of the sexual revolution, 1952 it was a psychological disease, right? 1968 they changed it to sexual orientation disturbance. They say that it's just a disturbance. Then in 1973 they completely remove it from the DSM. They say no, it's no longer a psychological disease, to the point that Nicholas Cummings, who's the president of the American Psychological Association, you know, when you write like scientific articles or essays, you have to write in APA format. He was the president of it. Okay, he said political correctness rules, not science. He says what's driving people's agenda now is political correctness. It's not science anymore. Scientists claim that he said that scientists at his time, they claim that it's not able to be treated or cured. They say it's a natural tendency. And he goes and says himself, he says it's absurd to say that homosexuals cannot change. He said, I experienced more than one. He said 20% of homosexuals who came to him, they could change, and they did change. So he said it's not something which is based on your nature that you can't seem to move at all. It's not rigid like race, right? It's something different. So many different psychologists said the same thing. Psychology has helped society accept homosexuality. By claiming it's something natural, not something from nurture, it pushes people to accept it as a reality that you cannot change. Okay, and they said they was exploited for political reasons, etc. Many different things we can speak about on this point. But the point I'm trying to stress here is that there's a push to make people into individuals because of the money behind it. There's a lot of money behind it. What am I talking about? If you own a nail salon, who are your normal customers? Women. Now, if you allow people to switch genders, now how many more clients do you get? Okay, they're like you wondering why like Pride Month was a really funny month, right? Why is it a really funny month? Because a lot of these businesses, they put on rainbow flags for the month. And literally the day after Pride Month, they remove the flags. Because you think they care, you think they honestly care about rights or whatever? What do they care about? Just making money. It's a lot cheaper to produce unisex clothes then it's, like if you can sell your clothes to everyone. Is the charger in? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. It's just a battery don't blow. There's also plug on that side. Okay, I think it's fine now. So cool. If you can sell unisex clothes, if you can sell clothes from, if you only have male clothes and female clothes, right, men and women's sides, right, you make a lot more money if you can sell to both, right? So there's there's an agenda here about breaking the family structure, right? So what I mean is that when we're talking about the, let me talk about the science now, because the big thing they talk about is the gay gene, right? They say there's a gay gene. They say it's natural because there is a gene which will determine if a person is gay or not. Okay, and the second thing they argue through is animals. They say that animals also have these type of tendencies, therefore we should also have them. Okay, so there's no gay gene. There's no gay gene. Okay, there's an article by Nature.com in 2019, a massive study that they've done. The researchers, they published their studies, their findings. They said there's no gay gene. Massive study homes in on genetic basis of homosexuality. Nearly 500,000 genomes reveal 5 DNA markers associated with sexual behavior, but none with the power to predict the sexuality of an individual. Okay, what else do we find? A new study involving almost 500,000 participants from the UK, US, and Sweden is by the most extensive of its kind, found it's effectively impossible to predict an individual's sexual behavior from the genome. When they say something natural or something from nature, they can't prove it. There's no proof of this. They're just trying to feed you a lie which is not really there. This is the thing I'm trying to say here. Okay, and I remember I mentioned this in the program, right? I said about an evolutionist who was asked about what homosexuality is, right? Because to evolutionary wise, is it evolutionary, like, it's survival of the fittest, right? Natural selection. What are all people here to do? They're all here to reproduce. Does that help you to be a homosexual? Like, I think that's the exact opposite, right? So the evolutionist, he got into, when the person asked the question, I was like, oh, they got him good. He was a kafir atheist, whatever. So then I was waiting for his answer. You know what he said? He said that homosexuality is nature's way of reducing the human population. Homosexuality is nature's way of reducing human population. There's too much population growth now. This is the way nature is curbing that. Stop it a lot. Okay, the study found no single gay gene and concludes that the link between genetics, environment, and sexual orientation is extremely complicated, with thousands of genetic variants potentially having some degree on influence of behavior. Okay, when they say, so that's the gay gene. When they say animals, okay, do animals have sexual orientation? They don't. Okay, if an animal were to have any attraction like that or interaction like that with their own, it's probably to assert dominance, right? That's usually what it's for. Is that if a male lion wants to show dominance over all the male lions, maybe he'll perform an act to show them that it submitted you, something like that. But it's never the case that its purposes, it might facilitate some other social goals. We have research on this point that there's no sexual orientation for animals. This is literally a common. This is one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. Okay, why do I mean so? What else do animals do? They eat what? Each other, not just plants, right? They'll eat each other. Cannibalism is mashhoor, it's famous within animals. Or should we all become cannibals now? Right? The funny one, is actually polygamy is known in the animal kingdom. Having more wives makes sense. If we're gonna act like animals, it's fun a lot. But no one will argue that point. So LGBT wise, when we're talking in terms of homosexuality, there's no natural basis for it when it comes to evidence within science. Transgenderism is also there. I put it in bold. Indeed, the most significant neurological characteristics that are sexed show no differences to speak out between transgender individuals and non-transgender members of the native sex. People think that if it's a person who's transgender is transitioning between man to woman, they probably think that he has a female brain or something. That's what, you're thinking that his brain is probably feminine or female, and that's why he has to transition. That is not the case. His brain is actually just like a normal man's. Okay, maybe there's some issues here and there, but for the most part, he is a man. There's no way to argue that. His body's been built for what again? Testosterone, right? And a woman's body's been built for estrogen. That stuff hasn't changed. So even talking psychologically speaking, there's no differences between a normal male brain and a person who transitioned to a female. They're both the same, okay? And there are different, again, researches that show that it's the same exact thing as well, okay? So, and then just as a side point, since we're already on the topic, there are a lot of complications when it comes to medical treatments, which people don't talk about. People are so open to just say transition without realizing the problems, okay? Puberty blockers. If you stop a man from going to puberty, you can make that person infertile. right? If, for example, a man who wants to become a woman, right? And so he takes puberty blockers. They say take puberty blockers, no problem, because that way you can have some time to figure it out, right? So then what happens is his puberty is delayed. So sometimes because of that, he can't his I'm trying to use like a nice word, the inzal, the stuff that he produces are not as strong as they should be because he hasn't gone through proper puberty. And so the testosterone's body is weak, number one, and the stuff that he has within his area is weaker. So he can't really do that stuff like he wants to. A woman is even worse because why? Because if she misses puberty, she might become someone who can never have a baby anymore. Let's say she realizes that I'm not actually a man, I'm a woman. Now you made this woman infertile. She can't have kids anymore. That's what happens to puberty blockers. Cross-sex hormones, again, the body was not designed to take testosterone if it's a girl, and it's not designed to take estrogen if it's a boy. Because of taking estrogen for a man, it actually reduces the strength of his bones. There's a lot of brittleness that happens in the bones, osteoporosis, a lot of different issues happen within the bones of a man because he's trying to transition to a female. A lot of harm happens, and because they're again, testosterone is not just with the physical stuff, it's with the psychological stuff too. He becomes depressed. Suicide rates actually increase after transitioning. People never talk about that. It doesn't solve the problem. They said, if I don't transition, I'll commit suicide. I'll kill myself. Though what's happening after they transition, still they go through these issues of depression, etc. Sex reassignment. Oh, I can't go through this one. This one, like sex reassignment. You think that they can actually like medically turn a man into a woman? Do you think they really can do that? No. Do you think they can actually produce the parts? How about a woman going to a man? Do you know how much you have to do to produce a part? You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot that has built this body. It's a miracle this body works the way it does. You can't produce that in a medical lab or a medical into an operation room. And trans regret after transitioning how they want to shift back, but they can no longer do so. There are a lot of complications with these medical treatments. Okay, that's the nature part. Philosophically speaking, the philosophical parts here, the class of nature versus nurture. Okay, so if they said to you that it's something I'm born with, something I can't control. Okay, if it's nature, I just ask this question objectively. Are you required to follow your biology? Are you forced to follow your biology? Is it something that's imperative that if my mind is telling me to do something, I should do it? Like, for example, for a man, I'm going to get to examples anyways, right? So, in any case, many people believe that genes cause complex psychological behavior, psychosocial behavior. Yeah, this is not the case, right? Genes, there's a lot of things. For example, gambling. Gambling is linked to a gene that's passed through generations. And so there's a genetic factor when it comes to gambling. This is much more affirmed than homosexuality definitely is. That there are some genetic markers will show you that you have more likelihood to go to gamble. There are genetic markers that show you that you're more likely to drink alcohol. There are genetic markers that show you you're more likely to commit certain sins that we have in Islam, right? And certain things like that. There are markers like that. Should you go gamble then? Should you go smoke then? Should you go drink then? Right? Is it okay that if a man goes to his wife and says, oh, honey, I'm sorry I cheated on you, but I have a lot of testosterone. It's just genetically speaking, biologically speaking. I can't seem to control myself. I'm sorry. The animals all have polygamy. I'm sorry, I did it too. Like this type of argument. Is it really what we're going to go towards? Nature, you're really going to say nature here? Really try to dodge this one. Don't say nature, right? And if by finding a gene, you not just become not responsible for your actions at all. If I did find a gay gene, oh, what? Congratulations. Now whatever you do is completely fine. Let's say if they found like an incest gene. Now there's a person who commits incest completely. Let's say they find a rape gene. Like certain tendencies, if you find them within genetics, does that mean that you have no more responsibility? Like, this is... Can morality be determined by biology? Can your moral code, your ethic be determined by biology, right? So the LG, the lesbian gay will tell you that is nature. The transgender, the T, will tell you that is nurture. They say that, gender is a social construct. You hear this, right? Gender is a social construct. That everything can be changed based on environments, right? That if you're raised in an environment that you're like a girl, you become a girl. And if you're in an environment which you're like a boy, you become a boy. Right? This type of weird stuff you hear. Okay. If it is, and so again, for sake of argument, let's say that because of your nature, your environment, you turn into a girl. What's the easy response to that? Isn't it possible if I put you in another environment, you could turn back to a boy? Right? So then a person can then change their orientation or gender through therapy. If I put you through therapy, it's possible that you could change back. Isn't that possible? If you're saying it's a nurture issue, then I'll say that I can nurture you back then. This is something that they put themselves in a corner when they talk about nature. They put themselves in a corner when they put themselves in nurture. You cannot argue on these two things. Now, in focusing on transgenderism, inshallah, we can do it. Okay. just they tell you gender is a social construct, right? Being a man or a woman doesn't really exist. Being a man or a woman doesn't really exist. So, it's just societies develop the concept of man, and societies develop the concept of woman. This is what they tell you. Again, you just need to have a good response to it. So, my question to them is, if man and woman doesn't really exist, then how can you transition between two fake things? Right? What are you transitioning from? You're transitioning from one fake thing to what? Another fake thing. This transitioning thing makes no sense, right? If they're made up anyways, how can you choose them? Right? If a lion is fake, you can't pretend to be a lion, no matter how much you try. Okay? If being a man doesn't mean anything, how do you become it? Right? And so, can we just say that you're a woman with manly traits then? So saying you're a woman that is a man, can we just say you're a woman that has some traits which are manly, versus saying you're transitioned to a man? This is the paradox in which this type of stuff exists. Every kufr exists in a paradox. Trinity, 1 + 1 + 1. Apparently, if you ask them math, you take a math problem in front of them. You say, what is 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3? Okay, now one God, one Father plus one Son plus one Holy Ghost equals 1. Ajib nonsense you hear. How does this exist? Okay, so the LG and the T actually are not on the same side. LG will talk about that we're nature. T will say we're nurture. So they both are clashing with one another anyways. Okay, when you say, if I were to ask you, do you know what it means to be a man? Everyone here? Yeah. Yeah, because why? Because you are. Okay, because you are a man. If a woman transitions to become a man, does she really know what it means to feel to be a man? She can never know that experience, because no matter how much you pretend to be a lion, doesn't make you a lion. Similarly, no matter how much they want to become a man, it doesn't ultimately make them into a man. Actually, what they did to themselves is that they put themselves in another group. They made a third group anyways. Because of the bathroom issue, they can't seem to figure out, should we make a completely unisex bathroom? They said they'll just make a third bathroom. So you didn't solve the problem. You just caused another gender, quote unquote, to exist. You haven't solved the problem. So to claim either nature or nurture causes problems. Okay? To claim both also causes problems. If you say that it's nature and nurture, the human beings they can develop morality or the ethics through nature and nurture, this is also a problem. Because the main question is, can human beings decide on their own morals? Are we allowed to define ourselves? Do we have enough information to produce a human identity? Can really one human say that this is how all humans are? Would you feel comfortable if one human told you that this is how humans are should be? Or whatever. If Sigmund Freud told you that everyone has a complex with their mother, would you agree with him? No, you would not definitely not agree with him. Who should decide how human morals are? Should it be nature or nurture? Should it be humans? My argument, your argument, is that the one who has the information should define us. The one who has information is Allah. The one who created us should figure out how to define us, because why? He created the product and he has the manual. So this is what we tell people. Why is our morals based on Islam? Because Allah, God, decides how human beings should be. And he decided that a man should be like this and a woman should be like this. And he knows better than anyone because he has all the human data that no one has, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. Okay? Which very nicely leads into our last topic, which is liberalism. Okay? Which is to being free to follow what you desire. Remember from the beginning? What was the principle of liberalism? Does anyone remember? You can do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anyone, which is the harm principle, right? You can do whatever you want. So, and again, it's right here. A person should acquire what is good for them if they don't harm anyone else. All right? So they're basically telling you, and this is the problem. If we're talking about philosophically speaking, we could break down liberalism, but that's not really important for you guys. They basically say I should desire things because I have desires. They tell you that you should be free to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anyone. What that means is I should desire things because I have desires. Do you agree with that? Because I have desires, I should desire them. What do you think? If you desire to kill me because I've been speaking for an hour and 15 minutes, like, wait, I should probably pause on the knife. I should put that away. My thing is like, what are you telling me right now? Like, what the heck are you saying? Just because I desire something, should I do it? If I wanted to just kill chickens and just hurt them and murder them, is that okay for me? Like, just because we have things that make us happy, is that always the right decision? Okay, and you can bring up examples. If someone says that I should be free to do whatever I want, say no, I mean, do you really think so? Tell them, do you really think so? If a person were to drink themselves into going to the hospital, or a person smoked to such a degree that they end up affecting their lungs, they get cancer because of it, or they took drugs to the place that they had to be, they had to be resuscitated, right? Or and you would say no, that harms other people. Maybe a person who drinks, they can hurt other people. I'll say, okay, let's say they're by themselves, they're drinking by themselves. Is that anything wrong with that? You tell yourself something is wrong here, but they're not harming anyone. They should be free to follow their desires. Why are you having a problem then? And then we're talking about the big issue. What about suicide? If a person said that the way I can attain happiness is that I kill myself, is that okay? Right? Do you bring up serious questions? And what about incest, right? This is the big one. Two consenting adults, whatever they are, brother and brother, let's just say, whatever, and they want to have these relations. Who are you to interfere with them? If you're saying I should not interfere with you, you should not interfere with them. Why are you interfering? Why are you saying something's wrong? And I will just hypothetically speaking, again, you can bring an Islam's example that if you're free to marry or do whatever you want, then if I had a second wife or a third wife or a fourth wife, whatever, why are you having problems? You should consent. I mean, apparently it's okay. I'm not harming anyone. We're all consenting adults here. We're all agreeing to it, right? So there are some major issues with this principle, because a person by themselves can harm themselves. Okay, people should pursue happiness, but does everyone agree what happiness is, right? If we don't know what happiness is, I want to argue, do we know what harmfulness is? What does it mean to be harmful? They say I'm not harming anyone. They're not harming anyone. I've already given you examples about how they can harm themselves, right? We spoke about that. But human beings, because they exist, they harm people. Because of your existence. You breathe in what? Oxygen. And you let out what?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Is carbon dioxide good or bad for other humans? It's bad. Even your breathing causes problems. Mashallah, a cow will produce milk. A bee will produce honey, right? A silkworm will produce silk. What do human beings produce? And waste. You go to the bathroom, you have the big bang every single time. Like you throw out, that's what I'm talking about there. Like a human being by their nature do not produce anything beneficial. That's why Jainism is another religion, which is the idea of abandoning nature, abandoning everything. Like literally, it's like zuhud to the max. It's as abstinent as you can be from the world, right? So they say the height of Jainism, the highest levels of Jainism is that you take off all your clothes, you strip naked and go into the forest and you die. Because that is the height of abandoning the world. A human being by existing is harmful. And even if you say that I just live in my room, I just play video games, you're using up electricity, you're taking up space, that space can be used for other human beings who produce some good for society. A human being by his nature is harmful. And this is things that you can see. What about those things that you cannot see? People think that this is the only things that happen in the world by fasad, is by physical things. In Islam, we know corruption has appeared throughout the land and sea because of what people's hands have earned. Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran that because people are sinning, that's why the earth is being polluted. That's why the seas are being polluted. That's why the world is going through issues because of the fact that human beings are committing guna and sins, right? And your burden or pleasure is placed on society. You're a burden to society. You should not be here. Okay, if a person wants to be homosexual or gay, right, or let's just say they want to switch genders, what do they need? What's the most fundamental thing that they need? They need money. You need society. You are causing problems to society. To fund your pleasure, we are depriving people that actually need the money. To make you feel happy, people who actually need food and drink and clothes are not getting that. Maybe we should use that for actual necessities for life instead of funding your projects to make you happy. Right? Elon Musk freaking just shot a rocket to space because why? How many millions of dollars went into that project? Just a little bit of that money could have sustained all of various countries throughout the world. But this person, because it makes him happy, he's allowed to do it now? Are we really going to say that people should follow their desires? The problems are, the Quran tells us that shirk is such a disgusting sin. تَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ وَتَنْشَقُّ الْأَرْضُ وَتَخِرُّ الْجِبَالُ هَدًّا. The Quran tells us that the heavens almost rupture at it. The earth splits and the mountains crumble and fall into dust. Because why? Because they said Allah Ta'ala has a son. And دَعَوْا لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدًا. The earth loses its blessings. The Prophet ﷺ told us, Hadith Ibn Majah, that if ever zina spreads in a community to such an extent that it's committed openly, when people have so much immorality, fahisha, that they do so openly, the Prophet ﷺ said plagues and diseases which were not present in the previous generations will spread amongst them. Literally, these ulama have discussed this ayah and they said that this hadith, and said that the ta'un, the pandemic that we just went through, because of the fact that people are committing so much zina, so this is a punishment Allah sent down on the world because of it. People think their sins are not, they think their sins have no impact on people. Whereas we Muslims know that whatever they're doing has an impact on the world. And this is the idea when you say that we're not harming anyone. When you see that rain has stopped, then know the zakat has been withheld. When you see swords are drawn, people are killing each other, then know that the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been destroyed. And if you see, so some are taking revenge on others. When you see an epidemic break out, then know that zina has become manifest, become spread. When you see a pandemic break out, then know that fornication, zina has has spread. And the Prophet ﷺ says, they are causing harm to themselves. The Prophet ﷺ said, a person is deprived of risk of sustenance because of sins they commit. So if you're telling me this person is having a bad time financially, it's probably because of certain sins you're committing. You have to stop the sins. Therefore, life will become regular. How are you going to live on Allah's land? You're going to sin against Him. Right? We should feel bad, legitimately bad about our sins, because we cause our own problems then. Okay, so now we'll come back to the main point. A person should follow good and bad and avoid bad. But can every person make that judgment? You said that everyone should be free to decide what is good for themselves as long as they're not harming anyone. But do you confidently feel that every human being in the world can make that judgment for themselves? Does every human know what's best for themselves? We barely know, right? I'll go home and I'll just play like Xbox all day or like PS5 all day. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. I'm playing. I'm turning 35 years old. Trust me, I'm not doing any of these things. Okay, this is hypothetical. I just don't want to say you guys are. Okay, so that's why I'm saying to me. Okay, I'll just play all day and wow, look at me, I'm enjoying. Oh, Assassin's Creed, Allahu Akbar, Call of Duty, mashallah. I'm feeling such a mashallah, such an enjoyable feeling. But is it the right decision? Is it the right thing to do? I'll go home and I'll yell at my wife and I'll start shouting at her and I'll get angry at her. I might even do worse things to her. Is that the right thing to do? Although it cause me pleasure, is that the right thing to do? Right? If I disobey, if I go against my husband and I start to say, I need my, I'm not going to do anything for you until you do this and this. Is this the right thing to do? What will Allah say? All these questions we need to ask. Can anyone make that judgment for themselves? Can they know what is best for themselves? The Quran says, have you ever seen the one who makes his desires his God? Who made his Lord his God? This is in the Quran. Allah says, have you seen what a terrible life a person will live? That they have billions of dollars but not spend a single penny on anyone. This is what it means when you follow your desires. Allah says He makes his desires his God. Is this what we are here for? Is this what we're here for? That we're just supposed to what? We're supposed to live in pleasure and avoid pain and then we die? Is that what life is about? Is that what life is all about? That we're just making sure that we can enjoy and enjoy and enjoy until we die? وَقَالُوا إِنْ هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. They say that this is only the worldly life. This is in the Quran. I'm not quoting anything beyond Quran. They say this is only the worldly life where we die and we live. Right? This is what they say in the Quran. Allah says this is what the life of a kafir is. وَمَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ. They have no knowledge of this. إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. They're only guessing. They're only making it up as they go. They don't really know. Because why? Because as a kafir, does he really know there's no hereafter? He doesn't know. He's guessing that there is no life afterwards, and he thinks there's no responsibilities, nothing, no judgment, nothing and everything like that. So the big question is, my brothers and elders and sisters in Islam, is there something greater in life that we're here for? Can fulfilling my desires truly make me happy? In Western societies, across the board, they have higher suicide rates than any other country. Although they have the most wealth, although they have the most money, they have the most benefits and everything. But why is suicide so much more here? Because can money really buy you happiness? Right? No matter how much money you have, if I can get my kid back in my house, I got divorced and she took him away. No money in the world will replace that feeling that I have. Celebrities, they are people that have the dunya. They have dunya. But yet, why are they the ones being caught with the drugs, being put in the hospitals, and even committing suicide? Why is that there? Because money and desire, just like these things cannot make you happy. What does the Quran tell us? Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Hear this. Allah says Allah. When you hear Allah, this is like someone saying, pay attention. The remembrance of Allah is the only place the hearts will find rest. Your heart was not created to make zikr of money. Your heart was not created to make zikr of women. your heart was not making zikr of any desire that you have, the only way your heart will find any happiness in life that you say Allah, Allah, Allah. You need to make zikr of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man lazim al-istighfar." Whoever constantly seeks forgiveness, جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ ضِيقٍ مَخْرَجًا وَكُلِّ هَمٍّ فَرَجًا وَرَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever makes istighfar regular for him, every day, 100 times you say, Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin. You think about the sins you committed and cry a tear in front of Allah. Allah says He will make sure for you that if you have any difficulty in your life, any distress, Allah will make a way out for you. Every anxiety you have, He will provide relief for you. And any place you find there's no money coming in, Allah will give you risk from places you could never even imagine. What did the Prophet ﷺ tell us? إِنَّهُ لَيُغَانُ عَلَىٰ قَلْبِي فَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى مِئَةَ مَرَّةً فِي الْيَوْمِ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. The Prophet says, sometimes there's a cloud over my heart. If this happens to the Nabi of Allah, definitely you and I go through even worse things. The Prophet said that sometimes my heart goes through these things. So I seek forgiveness of Allah 100 times in a day. And mashallah, the darkness clears up. Everyone here, you might have some depression, anxiety. The only way you can feel better is just say istighfar, cry in front of Allah. That tear will come out, your heart will feel so replenished. Wallahi, you'll feel so better. The Prophet ﷺ told us, whoever makes his man kanat hammuhu ad-dunya, farraqa Allahu amrahu, waja'ala al-faqra bayna aynayhi. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever is concerned about the world, Allah will scatter his affairs, make poverty appear for his eyes. He will not get from the dunya illa ma kutiba lahu. He will not get anything from the dunya except that which is written for him. وَمَنْ جَعَلَ هَمَّهُ الْآخِرَةِ. Whoever makes his concern for the hereafter, Allah ta'ala جَمَعَ اللَّهُ أَمْرَهُ. Allah will gather all of his affairs. He'll settle all of his matters. Make him, and وَجَعَلَ غِنَاهُ فِي قَلْبِهِ. Allah will put contentment in his heart. And Allah ta'ala will say the world will come to him even though he doesn't want the world anymore. This is what happens when you make your life for akhirah. And that's what we're here for. This is the purpose of life. When you live life according to your purpose, why you were created, if you live for what you were made for, then you'll be happy. An iPhone does not feel happy when you are throwing it like a frisbee. I know it might fly, but you think that's the right thing to use an iPhone for? Did you pay $1,300? First of all, did you really pay for $1,300? Okay, now, and the second thing is what? Did you really pay $1,300 for a nice frisbee? No, the iPhone will be happy if you use it as a phone, because it's a phone, right? And insan will be happy when it is insan. Humans will be happy when they come to the definition of what it means to be human. What it means to be human is what? You are a slave of Allah. When I go back into servitude and I go back to my master, then I'll find I'm happy again. But unless we make Allah Ta'ala our master and say Allah Ta'ala is my Lord, and until we let go of these other things, that this is not my God, this is not my God, this is not my God, only Allah is my Allah. And then you will not be happy until that happens. May Allah grant us tawfiq and understanding. Allow us to become people that, mashallah, that stay away from these fitan of feminism or LGBT. May Allah allow us that, inshallah, finish just right on time, mashallah. May Allah grant us tawfiq to become people that submit to Him, become people that find love in sajda, find love in ibadah. May Allah allow us to become people that become content with whatever Allah has decreed for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us people that when we make dhikr, the tears flow and the hearts become content again, inshallah ta'ala. Do you have questions? So there are a lot of topics, so please feel free if you have any questions about any topics. Yes.
So have you ever engaged with somebody like non-Muslim with on these topics, like feminist? Have you ever interacted with them? What was that debate, or if you did, what was that interaction like, and what was the result?
Well, so when it came to, at least I can remember one sister that had a lot of these feminist tendencies, right?
Non-Muslim or Muslim?
This was a non-Muslim. This was a Muslim. A non-Muslim, the only ones I've ever engaged with are like the priests and the rabbis, right? Which they're going through their own like cognitive dissonance. They're having their own problems because their books tell them to do something, but then they're doing the opposite of that thing, right? Like for example, they have like LGBT flags outside their churches and stuff like that. So, but I have dealt with Muslims. I haven't dealt with non-Muslims on this. But generally speaking, when I've seen like other people deal with them, and even the Muslim ones, they get very emotional and angry. Yeah, that's what I was telling people. Like, if you want to engage with someone, you should never engage through morals or morality. This is not the right way to deal with it. Someone asked me that yesterday, I think. They said, how do you engage with them? I said, you can't. Because they believe that the game of life has these rules. And you believe the game of life has these rules. Now, you would believe in two different laws about how the world looks, right? Your worldview isn't the same. Your life isn't the same. What are you going to argue about with them? What are you going to debate with them about? Right? My thing is, if someone comes up and says, how dare you say that if a person ever goes to a man, has sexual attractions towards a man, he's a bad person. I'll say, first of all, I didn't say that. I said if they actually commit the act, okay? For you to have desires, as long as you control your desires, you're a good person. You're one of the best people. But the thing is that you need to tell them, that's a good question, sister. Oh, mashallah, why the different rules in Islam? Why? That's a good question, sister. That's a great question. First, can you tell me, does God exist or not? Like, we need to talk about bigger questions, right? Whenever anyone asks these questions, like, why is there poverty in the world? Why does God allow wars? Why does God do this? Why does God do that? I say these are university level questions. Can we go back to the building blocks, ABC? Our children here, mashallah, know Allah exists. You don't even know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to talk about a fundamental question. So if anyone ever comes to you, first speak about Allah. I mentioned this yesterday. I said we never talk to LGBT community and we never ask them what they believe in. And this is the thing that we need to talk about, because kufr is a bigger sin than homosexuality is. And so that's what I'm trying to say here, is that when you engage with them, shift the discussion towards the existence of God. See how you can prove Allah exists, because that's the bigger question here. Because if you can put Allah back in the picture, then we can have a conversation. But if you don't believe my God exists, what am I going to convince you about? You know? I hope that answered the question.
Sure. So one other question, transgenders.
Yes.
So two questions. So one is that people who've already taken these steps and gone into this, became transgenders. How do you treat them?
Okay.
And the other one is these natural phenomena. Like, we know that they're men who, physical attributes that, resemble women.
Okay.
How do we treat them? Like,
yes,
of course, we have to interact with them.
Yeah.
But, and again, it reflects the previous topic. In your workforce, like, you will have these people. How do you can't just ignore them just because, okay, do you believe in Allah? No, I don't. That's it. No, you have to interact with them, right? Your existence will remind them each day that they are against you, that they need to finish you in a sense. And you have to, in a sense, make a engage with them in one way or another.
Yes.
Even if they don't believe in Allah. So how do you?
So again, engaging and being respectful, right? Like, so I always mention this point. Okay, so maybe I should make the disclaimer at the beginning too. But what we were discussing again was on the philosophical and logical grounds. We don't ever mean to be offensive or rude to anyone, right? We should never ever be, right? So now let me give you just a perspective. Okay, what's a bigger sin? Having a sex reassignment surgery, or saying that Allah Ta'ala has a son. Allah Ta'ala has a son, Christianity is definitely a bigger quote unquote sin than homosexuality could ever be, right? Why is that the case? Because that has to deal with beliefs, right? One has to deal with actions, two different things. So I mean to say is you're respectful to Christians, right? You don't go and like ever abuse them. You don't say they're wrong, etc. You treat them in a very cordial, very nice way. I respect everything about them, and I'll even respect certain things, all these different things, right? I won't go and like cut down their Christmas tree or burn their Christmas tree or something. I won't do anything crazy, right? Because why? Because I respect them. Similarly, you should respect them too. If they're in your workplace, mashallah, just respect them. They're human beings. They're having a problem. Legitimately, I think of them as patients, right? They're having a problem. Well, you're gonna be angry against a person who's sick? Really? Is that what we're talking about here? Person has an issue. Be nice to them. Be respectful. Like you said, like, if a person said, I don't believe in God, and you just said no, I'll say why. You should have a reason, right? And you should tell them, like, it's a big question. Believing in God is a big question because that decides everything. So you should not let the discussion stop there. If they just say no, then that's not enough. I need to know a reason for why. You should have a reason for what you believe in, right? Then have a conversation. I'll let them know this is like, oh, I just don't want to think about it. Well, you should say, if there is a God and there is a heaven and a hell, that's a big question that we need to consider. And the bigger question is, where does the universe come from? All this stuff, And then you can have these conversations. Never ever stop being the da'i, If there's a way for you to get this word across, then try to get it across. But always you should be respectful. Be nice.
So the reason I asked about the transgenders is, I don't know if you heard, recently in Pakistan, they started doing these ID cards.
Yeah.
So you could voluntarily declare yourself. Like, they were putting that option.
Yeah.
You can declare yourself either as a woman or as a man.
Yeah.
Or as a transgender.
Yeah.
There have been cases where men who went under surgeries and they're claiming to be, women. But the case is in high court. So I was trying to see that, because you need a perspective.
Yeah.
So how do you look at those people and how do you engage with them? Because they are at home.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? Like, how do you look at it? So do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, if you're talking about like
one, there's natural defense. People who grow these physical attributes.
Yeah.
One who chose to be this.
Yeah.
So how do you engage with them?
So
you have to show your unapproval. Like, you can't just be let's be kumbaya and go.
Yeah.
You have to show them that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right. How do we approach that?
Okay, that's a very good question. So let's just deal with the khunsa issue, the hermaphrodite issue first, because it's easier. So like obviously, like in Islam, we already have rules about people that have like a male person with like maybe female parts and a female person with maybe male parts, right? This is written with our books of fiqh. There's an entire chapter, Kitab al-Khunsa, right? There's literally a separate chapter within fiqh. And so our scholars have dealt very extensively on this topic. They basically said that it depends on where the urinary tract goes through. If urine goes to this part, then it's considered male. If it goes to this part, it's considered female. And they said even about puberty, they discussed that as well. That's what I'm telling you. MashaAllah, ulama have very extensively talked about this. They visited also a fatwa from Darul Deoband about the issue about sexual assignment surgeries. About like if a person wants to make tawbah afterwards, should they be considered a man or a woman, right? And this type of fatwa there is also there, mashallah. There's details about these issues. So and again, he mentioned about certain things about doctor's notes, etc. If a doctor can truly confirm, there's no way to turn them back, etc. and things like that, then how should he operate? It's a very mashallah wonderful fatwa written, I think back in 2012. So now when it comes to engaging or interacting and showing your disapproval, right? So now let me just again giving you perspective, right? There is a certain person, if I show my disapproval to, they will get an ibadah, they'll get a lesson. For example, maybe, like if my father did not talk to me, especially being, mashallah, being raised as much as I can within Islam, I will feel extremely depressed because my father is showing his disapproval with me. And I feel like I should change it, right? But let's just say another father and a son, right? Do you think every son cares what their dad says? Right? So even showing your disapproval may not produce the results that you want. Right? And sometimes being gentle produces the results faster than being rude or being aggressive with them. So showing your disapproval is hard. I mean, exactly how are you going to do it without making this person, Allahumma salli Muhammad, feel like they're being ostracized or being attacked or hated, So the thing is to have conversations, to sit down, let's have a conversation. Can we read a book together? Can we share things? Be strategic about it. Whenever any atheist I've ever talked to, I've always said, can we get a cup of coffee? Can we have some tea? Can we sit down, have a drink? Can I get your number? Can we have some talk? I always think it's a dialogue, not a debate. So that's the thing about interacting. Disapproval could mean that you actually sit down and talk about the issue and show your disapproval there within a context. But if you just downright just say, I'm not going to talk to them, I'm going to turn away from them, is that really going to change their behavior? That's the question. In the books of fiqh, it talks about with the fasiq, right? A person openly commits sins. Imam Abu Yusuf Rahmatullah said, don't give salam to them, right? And they said that fatwa is applicable in his time. Because if you don't give salam to sinners in our time, there's I hate these people anyways. They give me a reason to hate them more, right? And so being aware that disapproval sometimes may not produce the exact result that you want. I hope that kind of addresses it. I know it's a difficult thing. Allah make it easy, And these kids have to deal with it. All my Hifz kids, right? All the kids, they go public school, they come to Hifz after school. I asked them, I said, that you guys have to deal with this LGBT stuff? It's like, yeah, they said we get sent to the principal's office every other day. I said, all of you? They all raised their hand. Because they said, why? Because they tell me to tell a pronoun. I don't respect the pronoun, and then I use the wrong pronoun by mistake, and they send me to the principal's office. Then we have a girls' hips program too. And then I said, is that the same for the girls? I said, yeah, it's also the same. We're also sent to the principal's office. You and I are talking about it because we have someone in the workplace. These kids have to deal with it on the ground. It's tough. I'll make it easy. A very good question, mashallah. Any other questions? You guys have any questions? You do? Okay. Anyone else here? Please, inshallah. We have time, so.
So we have, according to this question, in Pakistan, there are a lot of transgenders. They fully believe in Allah and Prophet and Sunnah and all that. How do they fit into this conversation?
This conversation again is that if they truly believe that they're a man inside another person's body, right, or whatever. So again, we talked about how it's how psychology still defines it till today. Gender dysphoria is still in the DSM. Gender dysphoria means that a person who considers himself to be in the wrong body. So it's a psychological disease. Someone legitimately have a psychological problem where they think that, right? And so if they consider that as being actual psychologically, there's an issue there, right? Then we deal with like every other psychology case, right? So then they can be considered like that, right? If they've already gone through so much surgery, etc., then they're considered to be that gender or whatever. Then again, we just tell them again, like what the fatwa said, that if the doctor really confirms that they've transitioned so much they can't be reversed, etc., then you can just maintain them being under that gender, right? So there are different laws now. We can include them within the Islamic dialogue, right? The conversation. If you can try to convince them again, try to go to therapy, etc., that's the best process, because you can let them know that Allah doesn't make mistakes like this, So you can try to have that conversation. It's a difficult conversation to have. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be aggressive or direct. You should be very, you should have a very nice, nuanced discussion with them. Sit down, have a conversation. because then you can get the point across. So I would say like try to convince them for therapy, etc. Try to convince them like that, because again, it's psychological. You can treat the matter, right? Through therapy, through discussions, etc. There are a lot of websites I wanted to link everyone to. Just go back. Come on. Coming up, right? Sorry, let me just get out this right here. So, Away Beyond the Rainbow is a podcast by Wahid Jensen, who talks about homosexuality. He also has a WordPress where he talks about a lot of issues there. The Male is Not Like the Female is articles written by Mubin Vaid, where he speaks about the issues of transgenderism in detail. Parts 1 and 2 are wonderful. The End of the Rainbow is another article written by Mubin Vaid, which really helps. There's a website called Sex Change Regret, where people can talk about the issues after transitioning, about what problems they're having, right? There's a book called Brain Sex to help you with like talking about gender issues. The End of Gender was also a really good book to explain how transgenderism doesn't really exist in terms of genetics and science. And Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier. This irreversible damage is the transgender craze affecting our daughters. That's our full title, right? So each type of thing we can have a conversation, we sit down and talk about. You can sit down and converse with them. So that's what I'm saying, like learn to have a dialogue with sinners, right? This is exactly the thing we were saying. Learn to have a conversation with them and see how we can go from there. I hope that kind of addresses it. Okay, any other questions here?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Okay, sure.
Assalamu alaikum.
So you believe that the reason why the Western world is so progressive in like these cases, not that we should be progressive, but they are so progressive, is because they don't have these rulings, or these topics are not touched in like the earlier religions, because obviously these people are either Christian or Jews or whatever they are. Are these topics touched in those religions where they can defer to it, or do they just not have anything to look towards when they want the answers for stuff like this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like, do they not have any religions that they can go back to? I would definitely say Islam has the most robust discussion. You saw how much we had a conversation about Islam's stance and perspectives on it. Islam definitely has a lot to say on the issue, and the scholars have been dealing with it for centuries, right? These things are not new to us at all. There's like very little that we can say, quote unquote, is new, right? They do have an issue when it comes to like the religious background behind it. They do have some verses here and there, Christian-wise and Jewish-wise, but it's not enough. But the main issue that they're having is that they sold their deen a long time ago. Right? They sold their religion a long time ago. They're okay with everything, They were putting up the rainbow flag before anybody, right? So they were okay with selling parts of the deen as long as people could exist or whatever they thought was practicing their religion, right? So they abandoned the way of Isa and Musa long ago. So that's the idea of like, as a Muslim, we just haven't sold out, and we're not going to sell out. Right? We'll talk about the issue the way it is. You can disagree with me. You can cancel me. That's completely fine. Allah won't cancel me. I can still make dua. I can go to the masjid. I can pray. It's all fine, right? Nothing's wrong, right? If they cancel you on Twitter or whatever, all right. I was an idiot on Twitter anyways. Facebook, I really need to go open the book of Allah anyways. It's not. You know what I'm saying? So understanding that there are a lot of crazes within Islam, like what you call it, within like the Islamic world. Communism was really big at one time. Right? They were like talking about, we all have to become communist, right? Socialism, right? The atheism, right, was a big trend, right? Now you're seeing it slowly die out as well. And LGBT is the thing we're dealing with now, and it will die out too. You just have to wade the waters, right? Just be patient, inshallah. I hope that kind of addresses it.
That's a good question. I have one follow-up with that. So what is the counter to that? Because we know these topics are taught in schools and all that. In our countries, we are the automatic switch is fundamentalism. We go against it. Like I asked, like how do we treat them?
Yeah.
You're saying you have to be more of
passively.
Engage with them.
Yeah.
But to counter that is we're kind of giving this sense that it is acceptable. Yes. Because if you don't counter it with let's be with the story, we're kind of like giving them permission to be right. Let's be honest. I'm from Pakistan. Mentality. If you do something, it is not let's sit down and engage. It is automatic as if
So
how do we counter that?
That's good.
Of course, we can't just let our kids engage with them. Learn more about feminism, or rather, we can tell them there is sin. Just don't do it. It is something we don't even touch.
That's a very good point. Okay, so let's just first talk about, because the sword was mentioned, so I just want to make sure we clarify this issue. Just about like understanding social contracts. right? We are living under a government, right? And we have a certain things that we can do under a government. Allah Ta'ala knows I'm not approving of this, okay? Whether people around me think that, okay, since I'm being a good person to this person, whatever, I'm treating them well, whatever. If you think it helps your case or your point to show some disapproval by not talking to them, etc., if you think that helps you to drive the point across, then be my guest. If that's what your mind tells you that this is probably the right way to handle the situation. But having said that, like to think that because like, okay, they're doing this, and even like you mentioned in Pakistan, right? Now the government is deciding that this is the right thing to do. Now, if I break the social contract and say, no, I should just do, like I just get a little bit more savage on the issue, I may be breaking the social contract with the government, and that might be liable to sin. Because why? Because Islam has rules about obeying the leader, rulers, etc. Right? Even as long as they're letting you pray and stuff like that, you may not be able to transgress on those issues. So again, there's a political aspect here. Islam also tackles. So you have to be very careful about that. So it's not showing, again, like I have like a gay cousin, for example, right? I legitimately, this guy, I tried to text him, I tried to talk to him, I tried to reason with him. He came out one day just saying, I am gay, I'm proud, whatever. And I try to give salam, say how you're doing, because he's my cousin. So I'm trying my best to, bring him back, right? Would you do that for your own family members? What would you think? For my family, if I found out my brother was like this, what would you think? What would you do?
Condemn.
I mean, again, it depends on the country.
Yeah.
But the reason I asked, conservative.
Okay, so tell me which country we're talking about. We're talking about Pakistan or here? Okay, here. Okay, good.
Our upbringing is influenced by women.
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
So white conservative, they teach their kids when this topic comes in, he's blocked.
Yeah.
These are sinners, they're going to be held. That's it.
Yeah.
So automatically there's a switch. That whenever such thing comes up, there's a switch. That's it. As opposed to like to be, approach them, engage with the dialogue. You kind of like expose yourself to that. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, how do we teach our kids about these things? Of course, we're not going to go into depth.
Yeah.
This is what these things are. We can just tell them this is wrong and that's it.
Yeah.
How do we do that? That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so again, our perspective has to be a little changed here. That's what I'm trying to say. Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam is the best example of this, right? Did he die? What did he do? Did he go up to like every Qawm Lut and just beat the heck out of them? So what did he do? No, legitimately, what did he do? Did he have a dialogue? He conversed, he talked, and he told them about Allah. This is the reason why I'm mentioning these things. Fattaqullah wa ati'un is his da'wah in the Quran, Surah Al-Shu'ara. He told them to fear Allah, talks about Allah. The dialogue part is not just me trying to tell you that this is the idea of talking to people and conversing with them and relating with them. He goes to their meetings, he goes to their gatherings, he goes to their assemblies, and he tells them this is wrong, and he speaks about it, and he tries to speak about it with them like that. But the thing is that, like, so you can tell your kids, mashallah, to do this. And that's the thing. Well, how do we get our kids to be on the right path, right? So you tell them to talk, you tell them to speak about these things, to speak about these issues. They'll be sent to the principal's office like 15, 16, 17, 18,000 times, whatever. But they should not be aggressive in the sense that like they're abusing the person, right? Like, again, the idea that if my cousin or my brother were committing the sin, I wouldn't be as aggressive as I would be if it was a stranger. But that's only because I don't realize this person is also my brother, because they're all from Adam alayhi salam. If we realize that, I would be as nice to them as anyone else. But we don't realize that. Again, the perspective isn't there. So these kids need to be told about these things, that it is wrong, and then tell them to have a conversation, talk to them, to speak about how the issue is wrong. I'm not saying to have a conversation to go, hey man, let's go to the gay parade together. I'm saying go talk to them and tell them that it's something wrong to do, right? And speak about it and have a good way to explain it. But I'm saying wait for the opportunity. Sometimes the opportunity will come by itself where you can mention it. Right? Befriending a person and then explaining the issues with them is a much more effective way of getting the position to change. Now, how do these kids, mashallah, have a chance to like just be themselves and be Muslims? You have programs like this, where now they can just talk about this issue openly. They don't have a problem. I don't really care about getting canceled because I'm not on anywhere anyways. You're not going to find me. I don't have any social media, because I don't really care. These kids, mashallah, probably don't care either, but they need some place to feel like I can get this off my brain, get this off my chest. There's sometimes in front of the Maulana is the only place where they can talk about how they were sent to the principal's office because their parents won't even understand what the heck just happened, right? So having these places and areas where they can talk about is one of the most important things. So these are certain ways again, but just be very careful. There's only so much you can do before you get into haram perspective too. Like, for example, to hurt a person because they're committing a sin, like that's not what Islam says to do at all. Are we supposed to hurt somebody when they're committing sin? Like, we can't do that, right? Any other questions?
MashaAllah, you hit it right on time. You see just reality. It's not just here and that or anywhere else. I am still active duty. Coast Guard, so I do see that another case that comes up. They actually join this time 4 years in 6 years in terms of benefits, right? So a lot of people join for education benefits. Now I see a lot of this comes in. And operations has changed to match their gender. So I'm sitting here trying to think, how do I deal with this case? He or she, whatever you call it, right? At that point, it doesn't matter when they peak, become Patricia, next to Patricia. Regardless, they're going through this issue. They want to get ready to pay for that. And military itself also dealing with this issue. We don't know how to deal with it.
No.
We either boom, right?
Yeah.
We go to war, we go wherever, we go to a boot camp, we do all of everything that you do is in a separate partitions. Right? One military doesn't consider equality.
So,
We have different requirements for female soldiers, different requirements for male soldiers.
Ajib.
Really. So now if you kind of bring in the third,
Third gender.
how do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that?
How do you treat them? How do you teach them?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's also I myself personally many times pick myself like, but by the rules and laws, because my commander in chief told me to do so.
Yeah.
Follow the rules, saying like, hey, I give you rights, I justify, I provide you what your needs are. As long as you meet these, you get to do whatever you want to do. You came as your agenda.
Yeah.
That this is what you want to come out of your service.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody joined for certain benefits. So, I mean, there are some people that are like, I would say that they join to serve country. Still, it's a noble thing.
Yeah.
I consider it's number to be after a line. As long as it doesn't conflict with
Yeah.
religion.
Makes sense.
Right? So there are certain people and there are people that come from these countries and I see a lot of young generations now coming just to get that. So it is a reality, it is a money thing that's basically doctor free money.
Yeah.
$25,000 to go through an operation. And it's never going to 60 countries.
Yeah. By the way, the money thing, Jazakallah for mentioning that. Like, that's why they haven't taken out of the DSM. If you keep it as a psychological disease, what it means is that you'll still get benefits, right, for taking care of the treatment. So, homosexuality is not considered it, right? But they still kept gender dysphoria because you can still get medical help then because it's considered a disease then. It's such a ajib, sad reality we live in.
That's not what I say by law and providing me this, but within my belief, it doesn't fit right.
No.
And I see it as a stand.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I will mistreat you. I make
Yeah. And see,
justice and you get what you deserve and what you joined for. And there is nobody's giving you harassment or anything like that. Because throughout the years as you go, I get to deal with those kind of things. Junior members are always junior members. Yeah, they turn on each other, they do whatever they do to each other.
sometimes they're Pete, sometimes they're,
And when you go to you see me, I'm like being 19 years old. Oh, okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah,
that.
it's one of them.
Where you going with that?
Okay.
Mashallah, now
Look.
good introduction.
Yeah, cool. Any other?
No question.
Okay. They did ask for the
I'm not sure if there's any question.
the WordPress. No, they just asked for the WordPress. My WordPress is called Heart of Knowledge. I update it every once in a while. It has many things on atheism. A lot of questions about atheism that I brought up. Many questions people ask me, I just put them out there as a general, specific answer. If you'd like to just look at the WordPress, you can, inshallah. There's a bunch of them. We are working on a book because some ulama said to just put it together as a kitab. And the book is called Polishing the Compass, Alleviating Doubts on Atheism, right? So make dua, inshallah, Allah to make it to fruition and allow it to come in reality, inshallah. And Jazakallah khairan for being wonderful host, mashallah, to a guest that came. I ask for forgiveness if I said anything wrong. Anything that came wrong was from myself, and everything that came right is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi, jazakallah.